There are moments in a man's life when his path crosses with destiny, and nothing is ever the same again. This is the story of one such moment, set in the unforgiving mountains of Arizona Territory, where blood stained the red earth and a decision made in seconds would echo for generations. August 1876. The Mogollon Rim stretched across northern Arizona like the spine of some ancient sleeping giant, its ponderosa pines reaching toward a sky so blue it hurt to look at. 3 years had passed since the last Apache war, but the peace was fragile, held together by treaties written in languages neither side fully trusted. Elijah Bridger knelt beside Crystal Creek, checking his beaver traps in the pale light of dawn. At 33, he looked older. The wilderness had a way of aging a man, carving lines into sun-darkened skin, turning hair prematurely gray at the temples. His beard, thick and reddish-brown, covered the lower half of his face, but nothing could hide the scar that ran from his left cheekbone to his jaw. A memento from his army days, a reminder of choices made and unmade. His hands, calloused and strong, moved with practiced efficiency as he reset the trap. 5 years he had lived in these mountains. 5 years of deliberate solitude, of speaking more to his chestnut mare than to people, of running from ghosts that followed him anyway. The trap snapped shut with a metallic click that echoed across the morning stillness. Eli straightened, his buckskin shirt stretching across broad shoulders built from years of chopping wood, hauling water, surviving. He wore his hair long, tied back with a leather cord, Apache style. He had learned that from the old woman who lived 2 miles down the ridge, Rosa Littlefeather. She was the closest thing to a friend he had allowed himself in half a decade. Something moved on the trail below. Eli's head snapped up, his body going still in that particular way of men who had learned to read danger in the wilderness. His hand drifted toward the rifle propped against a nearby pine. Years of Army Scout training never quite left a man's bones. But it was not an animal. Through the morning haze, he could see something on the dusty trail that wound down through the canyon, something that did not belong. A shape, dark against the pale earth. Too still, too human. Eli moved fast, his long legs eating up the distance as he descended toward the trail. His heart hammered against his ribs, though his breathing remained controlled. As he drew closer, the shape resolved into horrifying clarity. A woman lay crumpled on the trail like a discarded doll. Blood matted her long black hair, darkening the dust around her head. Her dress, once a deep blue, was torn and stained. One arm lay at an unnatural angle. Her face, turned toward the sky, was swollen and bruised, the left eye nearly shut. Eli dropped to his knees beside her, his fingers finding the pulse point at her throat. For a moment that stretched like eternity, he felt nothing. Then, faint as a whisper, a pulse fluttered against his fingertips. She was Apache. He could tell from the intricate beadwork on her dress, from the traditional silver bracelet on her unbroken wrist, from the bone structure of her face beneath the bruising. The recognition hit him like a fist to the gut. For 5 seconds, Elijah Bridger was back at Cibecue Creek in August of 1875, watching smoke rise from a burning Apache village, hearing screams he could not unhear, seeing faces he could not unsee. He had scouted the trail that led the cavalry there. He had not pulled a trigger, but his maps had guided the guns. He had quit the army the next morning and ridden into these mountains to disappear. Now, destiny had dropped another Apache woman at his feet, beaten, dying, giving him a choice he had failed to make once before. This time, he would not fail. Eli slid his arms beneath her, lifting carefully. She weighed almost nothing, her body limp and fragile. Blood soaked into his shirt as he carried her to his mare. The horse, well trained, stood steady as he lifted the woman across the saddle, then swung up behind her, one arm holding her secure against his chest. The ride to his cabin took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. The woman's breathing was shallow, irregular. Twice she moaned softly, a sound of pain that made his jaw clench. Whoever had done this had meant to kill her. The only question was why they had not finished the job. The cabin appeared through the pines, a structure Eli had built with his own hands from lodgepole pine logs. It sat on a flat shelf of rock that gave a commanding view of the valley below. One room, a stone fireplace, a sturdy door. Simple, isolated, safe. He carried her inside and laid her on his bed, the only bed, built into the corner with rope and rough-hewn pine. She looked impossibly small against the heavy bearskin blanket. Her breathing rattled in her chest in a way that spoke of broken ribs. Eli grabbed a cloth and his canteen, dampening the fabric before carefully wiping blood from her face. The swelling was worse than he had thought. Someone had beaten her with methodical brutality. This was not the random violence of a robbery gone wrong. This was personal, deliberate. Her eyes suddenly fluttered open. For a heartbeat they focused on his face, on his pale skin and beard, on the rough cabin walls behind him. Terror flooded those dark eyes. She tried to move, to scramble away, and a cry of pain tore from her split lips. "Easy," Eli said, holding up both hands, palms out. He searched his memory for the Apache words Rosa had tried to teach him. "Ani inishni." He had meant to say, "I am listening," or "I will not hurt you." Will not. But even in her pain and fear he saw confusion flicker across her face. His pronunciation was terrible. Rosa always said he spoke Apache like a rock trying to sing. "I am not going to hurt you," he said in English, slow and clear. "You are safe here." Her eyes held his for another moment, searching for truth in the face of a white man she had every reason to fear. Then the pain and exhaustion won, and her eyes rolled back as consciousness fled again. Eli stood there, his heart pounding, wondering what he had just invited into his carefully constructed solitude. Then he grabbed his hat and headed for the door. Rosa would know what to do. Rosa always knew. The sun had climbed another hand's width higher by the time Rosa Littlefeather walked into the cabin, carrying a woven basket that clinked with glass jars and dried herbs. She was 68 years old, her face a road map of deep wrinkles, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in the traditional Apache style. She had lived through wars, massacres, forced marches to reservations. She had buried 3 husbands and 5 children. She had every reason to be bitter and hard, but somehow her eyes still carried warmth. "Let me see," she said without preamble, setting her basket on the rough-hewn table. She examined the unconscious woman with practiced hands, probing gently, her face growing darker with each passing moment. 3 broken ribs, she finally announced. Concussion, defensive wounds on her hands. She fought back hard against whoever did this. "Will she live?" Eli asked. Rosa glanced at him, one eyebrow raised. "Why do you care, white man who talks to horses more than people? Just answer the question." "Yes, she will live, if infection does not take her, if fever breaks." Rosa began mixing something in a small bowl, grinding herbs with swift, efficient movements. "What you call her when she wake?" "I do not know her name." "You know she is Apache?" "Yes." "And you save her anyway?" Rosa's hands never stopped moving, but her voice softened. "Maybe you not as good at running as you think." Eli had no answer to that, so he moved to the cabin's single window and stared out at the mountains. Behind him, Rosa worked in silence, cleaning wounds, binding ribs, speaking soft words in Apache that he could not understand. An hour passed, then another. The woman's breathing grew steadier, deeper. Color began to return to her face beneath the bruising. Rosa prepared a poultice that smelled of sage and something sharper, more medicinal. "She wakes soon," Rosa said, standing and stretching her back with an audible crack. "When she does, she will be afraid. White man's cabin, no people of her own." She fixed Eli with a hard look. "You be gentle. You be patient. She has reason to fear." "I know." "Do you?" Rosa walked to the door, then paused. "You're Apache terrible. You say I am cabbage, not I am listening. Despite everything, Eli felt his lips twitch. I tried. Try harder. Or speak English like normal white man. She stepped out into the afternoon light, then looked back once more. She carried two worlds, this one, like you carry ghosts. Maybe you help each other. Then she was gone, leaving Eli alone with the unconscious woman and questions he did not yet know how to ask. He spent the afternoon doing the familiar tasks that filled his days, checking traps, chopping wood, cleaning his rifle. But his mind kept drifting back to the cabin, to the woman lying in his bed, to the choice he had made on that dusty trail. As sunset painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, he returned to find her awake. She sat propped against the wall, the bearskin pulled up to her chest, her dark eyes tracking his every movement as he entered. Wariness radiated from her like heat, but beneath it he sensed something else. Strength. Intelligence. This was no helpless victim, despite what had been done to her. "Hungry?" he asked, keeping his distance, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. She watched him for a long moment before giving a small nod. Speaking seemed to cost her, but she managed one word. "Water." Her voice was rough, abraded, as if she had screamed herself hoarse. Eli poured water from a clay pitcher into a tin cup and brought it to her, staying an arm's length away. She took it with her good hand, the other cradled against her ribs, and drank in small, careful sips. "Thank you," she said when the cup was empty. 2 words, precise and clear despite her injuries. Educated. That surprised him, though he knew it should not have. "Rabbit stew on the fire," he said. "Nothing fancy, but it will help you heal." She nodded again, then winced as the movement pulled at her injuries. "Why?" The single word hung in the air between them. "Why what?" "Why help me? You are white. I am Apache. We are not friends." Eli considered his answer carefully. "Because I was there when I should not have been, and I was not there when I should have been. This time, I was in the right place." She studied his face, taking in the scar, the long hair, the buckskin clothing that spoke of a man who had gone more than halfway toward living Apache style. "You were soldier." It was not a question. "Was. Long time ago. But you remember." "Every day." Something shifted in her expression. Not trust, not yet, but perhaps the first fragile possibility of it. "Rosa Littlefeather says you speak Apache like dying rock." Despite himself, Eli laughed. "She is not wrong. But you tried. That matters." She paused, gathering strength. "My name is Nasha. It means morning star." "Elijah. Most people call me Eli." "Eli." She tested the name on her tongue. "You live here alone?" "5 years now." "That is very alone." That was the idea. He moved to the fireplace, ladling stew into a wooden bowl. "Can you tell me who did this to you?" Her face closed off immediately, fear flashing across it before she could hide it. "I cannot. I should not. Someone meant to kill you, Nasha. They might try again." "I know." Her voice was barely a whisper. "That is why I cannot tell you. If you know, you become target too. And you have been kind. I will not repay kindness with danger." Eli brought her the bowl of stew, along with a spoon. "Let me worry about danger. I have seen it before." But she shook her head, stubborn despite her pain. "When I am stronger, I will leave. You will be safe. You are not going anywhere for at least a week, maybe 2. He settled into the chair near the fireplace, giving her space. "Broken ribs take time. So does healing from what you went through." They ate in silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the evening wind sighing through the pines outside. Nasha managed only a few spoonfuls before exhaustion claimed her again. Eli took the bowl and watched as her eyes drifted shut, her breathing evening into the rhythm of sleep. He took his bedroll outside and made camp on the porch. The August night was warm enough, and besides, she needed rest more than he needed comfort. He lay looking up at the stars, the vast sprawl of the Milky Way painted across the darkness, and wondered what he had gotten himself into. Somewhere out there, someone had tried to murder the woman sleeping in his cabin, someone who would not be happy to learn she had survived. 2 days passed in a rhythm of healing and careful distance. Rosa came each morning to check Nasha's wounds and change the bandages. The swelling around Nasha's eyes slowly receded, revealing a face that was striking despite the bruising. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes that missed nothing. She was stronger now, able to sit up without gasping, to move around the cabin with careful, measured steps. She noticed everything. Eli's books, a shelf of them, unusual for a mountain man. The army medal tucked into a drawer that did not quite close all the way. The way he moved, the military training still evident in his posture and efficiency. On the third morning she spoke the observation out loud. "You read Tennyson. Not many trappers read poetry." Eli looked up from where he was oiling his rifle. "Not many Apache women know Tennyson." "Mission school." Something bitter crossed her face. "They taught me reading, and shame for my people." "Books do not lie like people," Eli said. "That is why I prefer them." She considered this, her head tilted slightly. "You are a lonely man, Eli Bridger." That was the plan. Plans change. He met her eyes and found understanding there. She knew about running. She knew about trying to leave the past behind and failing. They were both exiles in their own way, both caught between worlds. That afternoon she noticed the wound on his hand, the festering cut from a trap that he had been ignoring. "Rosa showed me," she said. "I can help." He let her clean it, let her apply a mixture of Apache medicine and knowledge from that mission school she spoke of with such mixed feelings. Her hands were gentle but sure, the touch of someone who knew how to heal. "Why did you fight back?" he asked as she worked. "Against whoever did this?" Her hands stilled for just a moment. "Because I refuse to be victim. I have been called that too many times already." She finished bandaging his hand and looked up at him. "I would rather die standing than live on my knees." Eli saw the steel in her eyes and felt his respect deepen. "When you are ready to tell me who did this, I will listen, and I will help." "Why?" "Because some things are worth fighting for, even if you have been hiding from fights for 5 years. That evening they sat on the porch as the sun set over the mountains. Eli taught her how to properly load and aim his rifle. Not because he thought she would need it, but because she had asked, and because the lesson gave them something to do with their hands while the silence grew comfortable between them. "Thank you," she said, as the last light faded from the sky. "For not asking questions yet. When you are ready. I do not know if I will ever be ready, but I owe you truth. You owe me nothing. You were dying on that trail. I could not walk past." She turned to look at him, her face half shadowed in the gathering dark. "Most men would have. I am not most men. Not anymore." The next morning, Eli rode down to Fort Verde, 40 miles to the south. He needed supplies, salt, coffee, ammunition. The small army outpost had grown into a trading town over the past few years, serving the ranchers and miners who were slowly filling up the territory. He was in the general store counting out coins for a bag of coffee beans when he saw it. The wanted poster, freshly printed, tacked to the board by the door alongside notices for land sales and mining claims. Wanted: Nasha Tahoma, Apache woman. Murder of Cornelius Blackwood. Theft of $5,000. Reward $500. Considered armed and dangerous. Eli stared at the poster, the world narrowing to that single piece of paper, to the crude drawing that nevertheless captured something of Nasha's face. Below it, printed in bold letters, "Last seen near Fort Verde. Report any sightings to Raymond Tate, Tate Trading Company." Terrible thing that, The storekeeper, a man named Walsh, shook his head. Apache girl working at the trading post for 2 years. Seemed civilized. Then she up and murders Mr. Blackwood, steals $5,000, runs off. Savages, you cannot trust them. Eli forced his face to remain neutral. They know she did it? Oh, sure. Tate himself saw it. He and Blackwood were partners, you see. Says she shot Blackwood right there in the office when he caught her stealing. Tried to kill Tate too, but he got away. Walsh leaned in conspiratorially. Word is, she knew where they kept their money. $10,000 in cash. Tate thinks she has it hidden somewhere. Eli's mind raced. Something about this story did not add up. The woman he had found on that trail, beaten nearly to death, was not someone who had committed murder and gotten away clean with $5,000. This Tate, Eli said carefully. He around? Over at the saloon, usually. Why, you seen the girl? Just curious. Eli took his supplies and left before Walsh could ask more questions. He found Raymond Tate holding court in the Cavalry Saloon, a well-dressed man in his late 40s with cold gray eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed. He wore a fine suit despite the August heat, and his voice carried across the room as he talked to a group of townsmen. I am offering $1,000 now, Tate was saying, dead or alive. That savage needs to hang for what she did. Blackwood treated her well, gave her work when no one else would. She repaid him with betrayal and murder. Eli ordered a whiskey and listened. Everything about Raymond Tate set his teeth on edge. The man was too smooth, too quick with answers, too eager to paint Nasha as a monster. Tate noticed him staring. Something I can help you with, stranger? Just wondering what drives a woman to murder, Eli said evenly. Greed, pure and simple. Tate turned to face him fully. You know this woman? Never met her. Just seems like quite a reward for one person. Blackwood was my partner, my friend, and she took something that belonged to both of us. $10,000 we had saved from years of honest trading. Tate's eyes narrowed. Any man who helps her is aiding a murderer. That is a federal crime. Good to know. Eli finished his whiskey and left, feeling Tate's eyes on his back all the way to the door. He rode hard on the way home, the wanted poster folded in his pocket, questions multiplying with every mile. When he reached the cabin, Rosa was waiting on the porch, her face worried. Riders came, she said without preamble. 3 men, asking about Apache woman. I tell them I see woman 2 days ago, running south toward reservation. Did they believe you? Apache do not lie. White men do. They believe. But her dark eyes were troubled. They will be back, Eli, with more men. That one, the leader, he had dead eyes. Eyes that killed before and will kill again. Inside the cabin, Nasha was standing by the window, her good hand pressed against the glass. She turned when Eli entered, and he saw that she knew. Somehow, she knew. He pulled the poster from his pocket and laid it on the table between them. Want to tell me why Raymond Tate thinks you murdered someone? The wanted poster lay on the rough pine table between them like an accusation. Nasha stared at it, her face draining of what little color had returned during her days of healing. Her hand trembled as she reached out, fingers hovering above the crude drawing of her own face. Because I am convenient, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Apache. No family. No one believes me. Eli pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down slowly, deliberately. I am listening. She looked up at him then, searching his face for judgment, for doubt, for the dismissal she had come to expect from white men. She found none of those things. What she saw instead was patience, and something else, something that looked almost like belief. I worked at Blackwood Trading Post for 2 years, she began. Mr. Blackwood hired me because I could read, write, keep accounts. Cheaper than hiring white bookkeeper, he said. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies. Money that should have been there was not. Supplies ordered but never delivered. Numbers that did not match. Eli leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "You think Blackwood was stealing?" "Not think. No." She stood, moving to the window despite the pain it caused her ribs. "Government sends money for Apache people. Food, medicine, blankets for winter. But these things never come. Or they come spoiled, broken, not enough. I thought it was mistake. Then I looked closer at the books." "What did you find?" "Blackwood and Tate were partners. They took government money meant for my people. They sold good supplies to miners and ranchers at high prices, then bought cheap, spoiled goods and sent those to reservation. They kept the difference." Her voice hardened. $47,000 over 2 years, while children starved on reservation, while old ones froze in winter without blankets. Eli felt anger rising in his chest, hot and familiar. He had seen the conditions on the reservations, had watched the Army herd Apache families onto barren land and then fail to provide the promised supplies. He had assumed it was bureaucratic incompetence. Now he understood it was something worse, deliberate theft from people who had already lost everything. "You confronted Blackwood," he said. "Yes, I was fool." She turned from the window. "I thought if I showed him proof, showed him what he was doing to my people, he would make it right, stop the stealing. But he did not. He laughed, said no one would believe Apache woman over white businessman, said his associates would ensure I never spoke of it again." She paused, her hands curling into fists at her sides. "So I copied the ledgers, all of them, every transaction, every theft. I was going to take the evidence to Fort Verde, to the marshal. But Blackwood found out." Nasha nodded, closing her eyes as if she could shut out the memory. "Last week, August 3rd, I was in the office after closing, copying the last pages. He came back. There was fight. He tried to—" Her voice faltered. "He attacked me, but I broke away, ran to my boarding house. That is where it happened. It was not a question. I thought I was safe. I hid the copies in my room, planned to leave for Fort Verde at dawn." She opened her eyes, and Eli saw the horror there, fresh as if it had happened moments ago. "But when I got to my room, it was torn apart. Someone had searched it. I hid in the wardrobe. That is when they came. Blackwood and Tate." The cabin was silent except for the crackling fire and the wind in the pines outside. Eli waited, giving her time. "They were arguing," Nasha continued, "about money, about what to do with me. Blackwood wanted to pay me off, send me away. But Tate said I knew too much, that I would talk eventually." She swallowed hard. "Then I heard the gunshot, so loud in that small room. I thought they had found me. But when I looked through crack in wardrobe door, I saw Blackwood on the floor, and Tate standing over him with pistol. Tate killed his own partner. He stood there, looking at the body. Then he smiled. He said, 'This is perfect. Apache woman murders white businessman, steals money, runs away. Everyone will believe it. No one will look further.'" She met Eli's eyes. "He saw me then, in the wardrobe. I do not know how. But he opened the door and pulled me out." "That is when he beat you." "Him and 2 other men. They wanted to know where I hid the ledger copies. I would not tell them. They said they would take me out to wilderness, kill me where no one would find body, make it look like I fled after murder." Her voice dropped. "They argued about whether to use me first. One of them wanted to. The others said no time, too risky." Eli's hands clenched on the table, his knuckles white. The rage that filled him was cold and focused. He had spent 5 years running from violence, from the man he had been in the Army. But some things demanded violence. Some things could only be answered with it. "During argument, I heard something," Nasha said. "Noise in the distance. Horses, maybe. They panicked, thought someone was coming. One of them hit me hard, knocked me down. I think they meant to come back and finish it, but I crawled away into the brush, made it to the trail before I collapsed." "And I found you the next morning." "Yes." Eli stood and walked to the fireplace, staring into the flames. The ledger copies. Where are they? Cave of Wind Spirits, 40 miles south, near Tonto Creek, sacred Apache place. I hid them there month ago, before Blackwood caught me copying. She hesitated. Only my people know that place, and they will not help me. I am too white for them now. We will get the evidence, Eli said, turning to face her. Take it to the marshal at Fort Verde. Clear your name. Nasha shook her head. You do not understand. Tate has many men. He has sheriff at Fort Verde in his pocket. Even if we get evidence, even if we reach Marshall, Tate will find way to make it disappear. Or make us disappear. Then we go higher. Federal Marshal in Prescott. That is 120 miles. I know. Through dangerous country. I know that too. She studied him, confusion and something else warring in her expression. Why? Why would you risk yourself for me? You barely know me. Eli was silent for a long moment, the question hanging between them. Why indeed? Because of Cibecue Creek? Because of the guilt that had driven him into these mountains? Because some part of him recognized that this was the chance at redemption he had not known he was waiting for? Or was it something else? Something that had begun the moment he saw her broken on that trail and decided that this time he would not fail to act. I was at Cibecue Creek, he said finally. 1875. I scouted for Captain Meyer, led the cavalry to an Apache village. I knew what they were going to do. Round up the families, take the children to boarding schools, burn the homes. He paused. I did not pull trigger, but I might as well have. My maps guided those guns. You carry guilt. I carry ghosts, and I have been hiding from them for 5 years. He met her eyes. Maybe this is how I stop running. Maybe helping you is how I finally face what I did. Or maybe you just die alongside me. Maybe. But I would rather die trying to do right thing than live another 5 years in these mountains pretending I do not owe a debt. Nasha moved toward him, each step careful, each breath measured against the pain in her ribs. When she stood before him, she reached up and touched the scar on his face, her fingers light as breath. You are good man, Eli Bridger. World does not have many of those. I am man trying to be good. Not the same thing. Close enough. They stood that way for a moment, the fire warm at their backs, the weight of what they were about to attempt settling over them like a physical thing. Then Rosa's voice shattered the moment. Riders coming up mountain. The old woman stood in the doorway, her face grim. 3 of them, maybe 10 minutes away. Eli moved fast, grabbing his rifle and checking the load. The bounty hunters? One of them the man with dead eyes, Jack Morrison. He kills Apache for sport. They call him Red Hawk because he collects scalps. Nasha had gone pale. He will not take me alive. He will not take you at all. Eli turned to Rosa. There is a root cellar, under the floorboards by the bed. Get her down there, now. What will you do? What I should have done at Cibecue Creek. Stand my ground. The cellar was barely big enough for Nasha to crouch in, a space Eli had dug to store winter vegetables and keep them from freezing. Now it would serve as a hiding place. As Rosa helped her down, Nasha looked up at Eli. Do not die for me. Not planning to. But if you must, know that I will not let it be for nothing. Then Rosa was replacing the floorboards, covering them with the bearskin rug. From below, Nasha would be able to hear everything, but she would be invisible, safe for now. The 3 riders appeared through the trees just as Rosa settled herself in the cabin's only chair, working on a piece of beadwork as if she had not a care in the world. Eli stood on the porch, rifle cradled in the crook of his arm, watching them approach. Jack Morrison was easy to identify. He rode in front, a lean man with a hawk nose and eyes the color of winter ice. He wore his hair long like Eli, but his was adorned with feathers and what looked like braided scalp locks. The 2 men flanking him were younger, nervous, their hands resting too obviously on their gun belts. "Help you, gentlemen?" Eli called out before they could dismount. Morrison reined in his horse, those cold eyes taking in the cabin, the porch, Eli himself. "Looking for an Apache woman. Wanted for murder. You seen her?" "Just me and Rosa here, no one else." "Mind if we look around? Just to be sure." "I mind. You are on private property." Morrison smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "That is not very neighborly. We are just doing our duty. There is a reward, you know. $500, maybe more if Tate is feeling generous." "I heard about the reward and the murder, but I have not seen any Apache women up here except Rosa, and she has been living on this mountain longer than I have." One of the younger men shifted in his saddle. "We should search anyway. Make sure." Eli's voice went flat and hard. "Touch that door, and you will leave in a pine box." The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. 3 guns against 1. The odds were not good, but Eli had the high ground and cover, and he had spent 5 years learning every inch of these mountains. If it came to a fight, he would make them pay dearly for it. Morrison raised a hand, stopping his men. "Easy now. No need for trouble." He studied Eli more carefully. "You have the look of military about you. Cavalry?" "Was. Long time ago." "What outfit?" "Does it matter?" "Just making conversation?" Morrison leaned forward in his saddle. "See, I did some scouting myself. For General Crook. Apache campaigns. I know most of the old scouts. Cannot place you, though. Maybe I kept to myself. Or maybe you are the one they called Bridger. Elijah Bridger, the one who went native and deserted." Eli said nothing, his finger resting near his rifle's trigger. Morrison grinned. "Heard you had some kind of crisis of conscience. Could not stomach the work anymore. That about right?" "What I could not stomach were men who enjoyed the work too much." The grin faded. "Careful, Bridger. You are already on thin ice, hiding out up here. Do not make it worse by harboring a fugitive." "I told you, no one here but me and Rosa." Morrison glanced at the old woman, who had not stopped her beadwork, her weathered hands moving with practiced ease. "Where did you see the Apache woman, old mother?" Rosa looked up, her face innocent. 2 days passed, running south toward reservation. Looked scared. I did not stop her. Not my business." "Which direction exactly?" Rosa pointed southeast, down the mountain toward the trail that led to the Apache lands. "It was the wrong direction entirely. If they followed that path, they would waste a full day searching empty canyons." Morrison considered this, then nodded slowly. "Appreciate the information." He looked back at Eli. "We will be checking that trail, but we will be back this way too, just in case your memory improves." "My memory is just fine." "We shall see." Morrison wheeled his horse around, his 2 companions following. "Enjoy your solitude while it lasts, Bridger. Things are changing in this territory. Men who do not pick the right side find themselves on the wrong end of a rope." They rode off, taking the trail Rosa had indicated. Eli watched until they disappeared into the trees before lowering his rifle. His hands, he noticed, were steady. The fear and doubt he had carried for 5 years seemed to have burned away, leaving something harder and clearer in their place. Rosa stood and lifted the edge of the bearskin. "They are gone." Nasha emerged from the cellar, dust in her hair, her face tight with pain from crouching in the confined space. "They will be back." "Yes," Eli agreed. "Which is why we leave tonight. Head for the Cave of Wind Spirits, get the evidence, then straight to Prescott. No stops, no delays. That is 80 miles through Apache country and Tate's territory. Then we better travel fast." Rosa moved to her basket and began pulling out supplies. Dried meat, hardtack, a pouch of medicinal herbs. "I will spread word you went north. Buy you time." "Thank you, Rosa." The old woman looked at him, her eyes soft. "You stop running from ghosts now, yes?" "Starting to." "Good. Because she need man who stands still long enough to build life." Night fell across the Mogollon Rim like a curtain of black velvet studded with diamond stars. Eli and Nasha prepared to leave in silence, each movement economical and purposeful. 2 horses, light supplies, rifles and ammunition, everything they would need to survive 40 miles of wilderness and whatever waited at the end. As Eli saddled the horses, Nasha stood at the cabin door, looking back at the small space that had sheltered her where she had begun to heal. "Will you come back here? After? I do not know. Maybe this place is part of what I am leaving behind. And if we fail, if Tate catches us, then at least I will fail standing up instead of hiding." She smiled at that, a real smile despite the fear, despite the uncertainty. "You sound like an Apache warrior. Maybe Rosa has been teaching me more than I realized." They mounted and rode out under the stars, leaving the cabin dark and empty behind them. The trail south was treacherous in the darkness, but Eli knew it well, and the horses were sure-footed. They moved quickly but carefully, aware that sound carried far in the mountain silence. For the first hour, neither spoke. Then, as they descended into Verde Valley, Nasha broke the silence. "Tell me about Cibecue Creek. If we are riding into death together, I should know what ghosts drive you." Eli was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then, slowly, he began to speak. August 1875. Captain Meyer ordered me to scout an Apache village near Cibecue Creek. Said we were going to relocate them peacefully to the reservation. I knew it was a lie. I had seen too many peaceful relocations that turned into massacres. "But you went anyway." "I went anyway. I told myself it was duty, following orders, not my choice." He paused, the words catching in his throat. "I led them there, mapped the approaches, showed them where the families slept, where the warriors would be. I did everything but pull the trigger. What happened? What always happens. The warriors fought back, the soldiers opened fire, women and children trying to run, the smell of smoke and blood and gunpowder." His voice had gone flat, emotionless, the way a man speaks when the pain is too great to feel. "I watched a mother throw herself off a cliff with her baby rather than let the soldiers take them. I watched children no older than 6 or 7 try to protect their grandparents. I watched good men do evil things because they had been told it was necessary. And you did nothing." "I did nothing," he agreed. "I stood there with my maps and my guilt and watched it all happen. Then I turned in my uniform and rode into the mountains." Nasha rode in silence for a moment, processing this. "You think saving me absolves you?" "No, nothing absolves what I did. But maybe it is start of something different. Maybe I cannot change past, but I can change what happens next." "That is more than most men do." They rode on through the darkness, the valley spreading out below them bathed in silver moonlight. Somewhere ahead lay the cave of wind spirits and the evidence that could clear Nasha's name. Somewhere behind them, Jack Morrison and his men were searching empty canyons. And somewhere in between, Raymond Tate was planning his next move. But for this moment, riding through the night with purpose for the first time in 5 years, Eli felt something he had not felt since Cibecue Creek. He felt like he was finally moving in the right direction. Dawn broke over the desert mountains like fires spilling across ancient stone. Eli and Nasha had been riding for 6 hours, following game trails and dry washes that only someone who knew this land intimately could navigate in darkness. Now, as the sun climbed above the eastern peaks, they finally allowed themselves to stop. They were deep in Apache country now, past the point where most white men dared to travel. The land here was harsh and unforgiving, all red rock and prickly pear, dotted with scrub oak and juniper that clung to existence in defiance of the heat and drought. Beautiful in its own savage way. Eli dismounted and helped Nasha down, noting how she moved more stiffly now, the night's ride taking its toll on her still healing ribs. She said nothing about the pain, but he saw it in the tightness around her eyes, the careful way she breathed. "We rest here 2 hours," he said, leading the horses to a patch of shade beneath an overhanging cliff. "Let them drink and graze. We have another 30 miles ahead of us." Nasha sank down against a boulder, her face pale beneath its bronze coloring. How long until Morrison realizes Rosa sent him wrong direction? He already knows. A man like that does not survive by being stupid, but it bought us the night. That is all we needed. She closed her eyes, tilting her face toward the warming sun. You know this land well for white man. 5 years of wandering teaches you things, and Rosa taught me more, where the water is, which plants you can eat and which will kill you. How to read the sky for weather. He paused, pulling dried meat from his saddlebag. How to see this place the way your people see it, not as something to conquer, but as something to live with. Rosa sees much, including things not yet happened. You believe in that? Visions and prophecy? Nasha opened her eyes and looked at him steadily. I believe some people see patterns others miss. Rosa is one of those people. She saw you needed purpose before you died from lack of it, and she saw I would be the one to bring it. Eli handed her the dried meat and his canteen. She said that? She did not need to say it. I heard it in the way she spoke to you, saw it in how she looked at us together. Nasha took a small bite, chewing slowly. Rosa lost much in her life. 3 husbands, 5 children, entire way of living. But she did not become bitter. She became wise instead. That is rare gift. She said you carry 2 worlds, that we are alike in that. We are. Nasha's voice grew softer. I was 7 when missionaries came to our camp. They promised education, food, safety. My parents were dead already, killed in raid 2 years before. My brother Kaya and I were living with grandmother. She was old, struggling. When missionaries offered to take me to school, she agreed. She thought I would have better life. But your brother stayed. Kaya chose Apache way. I chose mission school. Or rather, choice was made for us. She stared out at the desert, seeing something far away. School taught me English, arithmetic, manners of white people. They also taught me shame. Said Apache ways were savage, devil's work. They beat children who spoke our language, punished those who remembered old customs. Eli felt the familiar anger rising. He had seen the mission schools, knew what they did in the name of civilization. But you did not forget. No, I kept language hidden inside, like jewel wrapped in cloth. Kept stories grandmother told me locked in memory where teachers could not reach. When I left school at 16, I was neither Apache nor white. I was something in between, something neither side wanted. That is why you worked for Blackwood. Yes, Apache on reservation would not accept me. Too white. Whites in town would not hire me for any decent work. Too Apache. Blackwood needed bookkeeper who worked cheap. I needed money to survive. So we made arrangement. The bitterness in her voice was sharp as broken glass. I should have known man who hired me only because I was cheap would be man who stole from my people. They sat in silence for a while, the desert heat building around them, the horses cropping at sparse grass nearby. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals only it could feel. Eli watched Nasha from the corner of his eye, seeing the strength in her despite everything. The way she refused to break even when the world had given her every reason to. When this is over, he said carefully, when we clear your name and Tate faces justice, what will you do? She turned to look at him, surprise flickering across her face. You think ahead to after? Most people would focus on surviving now. I have spent 5 years not thinking ahead, not planning, just existing day to day in those mountains. Maybe it is time I started imagining a future again. And what future do you imagine? I do not know yet, but I know it involves more than hiding. Nasha smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. That is good start. Specific plans can come later. They were mounting up to continue when Eli heard it, a sound that did not belong. Not bird or animal, but the sharp crack of stone against stone. His hand moved to his rifle even as he pressed a finger to his lips, signaling Nasha to silence. For 30 seconds, nothing. Then movement in the rocks above them. Not one person but several, appearing as if the desert itself had given birth to them. 6 Apache warriors, traditional dress, faces painted for war, rifles pointed down at the 2 travelers. Nasha's breath caught. "Kaya!" The warrior in the center stepped forward, a man in his late 20s with the same high cheekbones and determined jaw as Nasha. He spoke in rapid Apache, his voice hard and accusing. Eli understood perhaps 1 word in 5, but the tone was clear. This was not a friendly reunion. Nasha responded in kind, her voice rising to match her brother's intensity. They argued back and forth, words flying like arrows, while the other warriors watched with impassive faces. Finally, Kaya switched to English, his accent thick, but his meaning clear. "You bring white soldier to sacred land? Have you no shame, sister? He is not soldier anymore, he saved my life, and he is helping me stop the man who murdered Cornelius Blackwood and tried to kill me." Kaya's eyes flicked to Eli, measuring him with the gaze of a man who had survived by reading threats accurately. "You were cavalry. I can see it in how you sit horse, how you watch the land." "I was," Eli said quietly. "I am not proud of what I did when I wore that uniform. Sibique Creek. You were there." It was not a question. Eli felt his stomach drop. "Yes." "Then I should kill you now." Kaya raised his rifle, sighting down the barrel. "My cousin died there. His wife, their 2 children." "Kaya, no." Nasha moved her horse between them. "He carries guilt for that day every moment. He quit army because of it. He has been hiding in mountains for 5 years because he could not face what he had done. Guilt changes nothing. Dead remain dead. But more dead solves nothing either." She held her brother's gaze, unflinching. "Listen to me. Raymond Tate is stealing from our people. Government sends money for food, medicine, blankets. Tate and Blackwood took it, for 2 years. $47,000, while children starve and old ones freeze." Kaya lowered his rifle slightly, uncertainty crossing his face. "How do you know this?" "I kept the books. I saw every transaction. I copied everything. The evidence is hidden at Cave of Wind Spirits." "And you think white man's law will punish white man for stealing from Apache?" Kaya's laugh was bitter. "You are more naive than I thought." "Maybe," Nasha agreed. "But doing nothing guarantees nothing changes. At least this way we try." Kaya was silent for a long moment, his eyes moving between his sister and Eli. The other warriors watched and waited, their loyalty to their leader absolute. Finally, Kaya spoke again. "Why should I trust him? His kind has lied to us before." "Because he did not have to help me," Nasha said. "He could have left me to die on that trail. He could have turned me in for reward money. Instead, he hid me from bounty hunters and chose to ride into danger at my side." She paused. "He is trying to be better man than he was. That is more than most can say." Kaya studied Eli for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, he lowered his rifle completely. "Very well. But understand this, white man. If you betray my sister, if you bring harm to her, I will hunt you to the ends of earth, and death I give you will not be quick." "I would expect nothing less," Eli replied. "We will escort you to Cave of Wind Spirits, but we will not enter. That place is sacred. Your presence there is already desecration. We will not compound it." "Thank you, brother," Nasha said softly. "Do not thank me yet. We are not allies. We are family, helping family. When this is done, you must choose. Apache way or white way. You cannot walk both roads forever." They rode together through the afternoon, an uneasy alliance of Apache warriors and the 2 people who belonged fully to neither world. Kaya's men spread out in a protective formation, moving with the easy confidence of people who knew every rock and shadow of this land. As they traveled, one of the warriors rode close to Eli. He was younger than the others, perhaps 20, with a scar that ran from his ear to his chin. You kill Apache? The young warrior asked bluntly. No. I scouted for men who did. That is same thing. I know. The warrior considered this. You feel shame? Every day. Good. Shame means you still have soul. Men without shame are most dangerous. He rode away without another word, leaving Eli to contemplate that wisdom. By sunset they reached the approaches to Cave of Wind Spirits. The entrance was hidden in a cliff face, behind a screen of juniper and manzanita. Ancient petroglyphs covered the rocks around it, symbols and figures worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. This was a place of power. Eli could feel it even without Apache blood. A place where the boundary between the physical world and the spirit world grew thin. You have until dawn, Kaya said, dismounting. After that, you must leave Apache land. Forever. Nasha nodded. She and Eli approached the cave entrance alone, leaving the horses with the warriors. As they pushed through the vegetation, Kaya called out one more time. Sister. She turned. Be careful. Cave has many passages. Only one leads to sacred chamber where grandmother took you as child. The others lead to darkness. Inside, the temperature dropped 20 degrees almost immediately. The entrance tunnel was narrow, forcing them to move single file, Nasha leading with a torch made from juniper branches and pitch. Their shadows danced on the walls, merging and separating in the flickering light. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, and here the petroglyphs covered every surface. Spirals and handprints, figures of men and animals, symbols whose meaning had been lost to time. Eli felt the weight of history pressing down on him, the awareness that he was walking where he did not belong. This way, Nasha said, moving toward a side passage barely visible in the torchlight. They descended deeper into the earth, the passage twisting and turning. Twice they came to forks where Nasha had to stop and remember, her fingers tracing patterns on the wall as if reading a map only she could see. Finally, they emerged into a chamber that took Eli's breath away. The walls here were covered in paintings, not just petroglyphs but full-color images rendered in red and white and yellow ochre. Hunting scenes, ceremonies, faces of ancestors watching from the stone, and in the center of the chamber a flat stone altar where offerings had been left. Dried corn, feathers, a clay pot filled with sacred herbs. Grandmother brought me here when I was 6, Nasha said quietly, before missionaries came. She said this place held memory of our people, that as long as it existed, we would never truly disappear. She moved to the altar and knelt, reaching behind it to a crevice in the rock. For a moment that stretched into eternity, she felt nothing. Then her fingers closed on leather. She pulled out a satchel, worn and dusty but intact. It is still here, she breathed, opening it with trembling hands. 3 ledgers, a stack of letters, a hand-drawn map, all the evidence needed to prove that Raymond Tate and Cornelius Blackwood had systematically stolen from the Apache people. And more than that, the map showed weapon cache locations throughout the territory. The letters detailed plans to arm renegade Apache bands, stage attacks on settlers, and blame the entire Apache nation. A scheme to restart the Indian Wars for profit. Eli took the map, his face darkening as he read. This is not just theft. This is conspiracy to commit genocide. Tate was going to start another war, use my people as pawns to make himself rich through military supply contracts. Nasha's voice shook with rage. How many would have died? How many children like I was, watching their parents killed? How many warriors like Kaya forced to fight because white men need excuse for more killing? Not anymore. Eli carefully folded the map and returned it to the satchel. This evidence ends it. Tate will hang for this. They were turning to leave when the sound reached them. Gunfire, distant but unmistakable, and shouting in English and Apache. They ran back through the passages, Nasha leading despite the pain in her ribs, the torch streaming smoke behind them. They emerged from the cave to chaos. Tate's men had found them. 12 riders, heavily armed, had ambushed Kaya's warriors. The Apache had taken cover in the rocks and were returning fire, but they were outnumbered 2-1. As Eli watched, one of Kaya's men fell, blood blooming on his chest. "Miss Tahoma!" The voice cut through the gunfire like a blade. Raymond Tate himself, sitting his horse well back from the fighting, protected by his men. "I know you are in there. Give me those ledgers and tell me where Blackwood hid the money, and perhaps I let you walk away," Nasha shouted back from the cave entrance. "I do not have your blood money." "Then you die in that cave, a fitting tomb for a savage." Tate's eyes found Eli, recognition dawning. "Wait, Bridger? Elijah Bridger? Myers' scout?" Tate laughed, the sound carrying across the gunfire. "The deserter! Should have known you would side with Indians over your own kind. You always were weak." "Weak is a man who steals from starving children," Eli called back. "Weak is a man who murders his partner for money." "Careful, Bridger. You are already on the wrong side of the law. Do not make it worse." Eli turned to Nasha. "There is another way out. Kaya mentioned passages." "Yes, but I only know one path. The others could lead anywhere. Or nowhere. Better than being trapped here." Bullets suddenly hammered the rock around the cave entrance, forcing them back into the tunnel. Tate was done talking. He meant to smoke them out or bury them alive. "Wait," Nasha said, pressing her hand against the tunnel wall. "Grandmother told story. Back passage that exits near waterfall, half-mile west. I never explored it as child. Too frightened." "Can you find it?" "I can try." They plunged back into the cave system, this time taking a different fork. The passage grew narrower, forcing Eli to turn sideways in places, his broad shoulders scraping stone. Roots hung from the ceiling like grasping fingers. The air grew close and thick. Eli had never spoken of his fear of enclosed spaces, a legacy of being buried alive briefly during a cavalry battle years ago. But now, deep in the earth with tons of rock above and the walls pressing in, that old terror rose like bile in his throat. His breathing quickened. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the coolness. "Eli?" Nasha had noticed. "Are you all right? Keep moving. You are afraid." "I said keep moving." But she stopped, turning to face him in the narrow space, the torch casting wild shadows on her face. "You faced bounty hunters for me. You rode into Apache country. You are risking your life. But you fear small spaces." "Everyone fears something." "Yes, but you do it anyway. That is courage." She reached out and took his hand. "Trust me, like I trusted you." They continued, her hand in his, and somehow the walls seemed less close, the darkness less absolute. The passage twisted and dropped, forcing them to crawl at times. Then finally they heard it. Water, the rushing sound of a creek or stream. The passage opened suddenly into a hidden grotto behind a waterfall. Sunlight filtered through the falling water like liquid gold. They emerged wet and gasping into the late afternoon air. Behind them the sounds of battle had intensified. They circled around through the brush until they could see the cave entrance from a different angle. Kaya's warriors were pinned down but holding position. Tate's men were advancing, confident in their numbers. "We need to help them," Nasha said. "We need to survive long enough to get this evidence to Prescott. I will not leave my brother to die." Eli looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, and knew there would be no arguing. "Then we even the odds." They emerged from behind Tate's position, rifles raised. Eli's first shot took a bounty hunter in the shoulder, spinning him around. His second shot hit another man in the leg. Nasha fired as well, her aim true despite the rifle's kick against her injured ribs. The sudden attack from behind threw Tate's men into confusion. They had expected trapped prey, not a coordinated assault from two sides. Kaya and his warriors immediately pressed the advantage, their war cries echoing off the cliffs. The battle was short and brutal. 4 of Tate's men fell. 5 more threw down their weapons and surrendered when they realized they were caught in a crossfire. The rest, including Tate himself and 2 bodyguards, spurred their horses and fled east toward Fort Verde. In the sudden silence that followed, Kaya approached Eli, his shoulder bleeding from a bullet graze. Eli had a bandage ready before the Apache warrior could speak. "You saved my life," Kaya said, allowing Eli to wrap the wound. "You were protecting my—" Eli hesitated. "You were protecting Nasha." "Your what? Say it." Eli met his eyes. "I do not know yet, but she is important to me." Kaya nodded slowly. "You fight like Apache. Maybe my sister sees truth I missed." He clasped Eli's shoulder. "You have earned respect today, but earn it again tomorrow and the day after. That is how trust is built." "I understand." One of Kaya's warriors had been killed, 2 others wounded. They wrapped their dead brother in a blanket and prepared to carry him home. As they worked, Kaya turned to Nasha. "You must go to Prescott. Tate will reach Fort Verde first. Sheriff there is his man. Your only chance is federal marshal. That is 2 days' hard ride. Then ride hard. We will give you fresh horses. Swift Runner and Tall Wolf will ride with you, guide you through back trails. They are my best scouts. Faster than main road, and Tate will not think to watch for you there." "Thank you, brother." "Do not thank me, just survive. And when this is done, come home. There is place for you among the people, if you want it. You are Apache, Nasha. No matter what language you speak or whose cabin you sleep in, you are one of us." Tears streamed down her face as she embraced him. They spoke quietly in Apache, words Eli could not understand but whose meaning was clear. Forgiveness, acceptance, family. As the sun set, painting the desert in impossible colors, Eli and Nasha mounted fresh horses and turned north toward Prescott. 2 Apache warriors rode with them, silent and watchful. In the saddlebag, the evidence that would bring down Raymond Tate rode safe and secure. They had faced death in the cave and battle outside it. They had evidence and allies. But the hardest part still lay ahead, getting to Prescott alive, finding someone who would listen to an Apache woman and a deserter, convincing them to act against a man with money and influence. "Do you think we can do this?" Nasha asked as they rode into the gathering darkness. "I think we have to try," Eli replied, "and if we fail, at least we fail together." She smiled at that. "Together is not so bad." "No," he agreed, surprising himself with the warmth in his voice. "It is not bad at all." The night stretched before them like an ocean of darkness, broken only by the silver ribbon of the trail and the stars scattered across the sky like scattered seed. Eli and Nasha rode hard through Apache country, their 2 silent escorts keeping pace on either side, shadows within shadows. They pushed the horses to the edge of endurance, stopping only to water them at hidden springs that only the Apache guides knew. No fires. No rest longer than what it took to chew dried meat and drink from canteens. Every moment counted now. Every mile gained was a small victory against the man who wanted them dead. As dawn broke on their 2nd day of riding, one of the Apache scouts raised his hand. They reined in on a ridge overlooking a narrow canyon. Below them, the main road to Prescott wound through the rocks like a snake. And on that road, blocking the only clear passage north, were riders, at least 8 of them. "Tate's men," Eli said quietly. "He knew we would have to come this way." The scout spoke in Apache, and though Eli's understanding was limited, he caught the meaning. There was another route, but it would add half a day to their journey, time they could not afford to lose. "We can go around," Nasha translated, "through Granite Pass, but it is dangerous. Narrow trail, steep drop. One mistake and horse and rider both fall." Eli studied the men below. They had not seen the group on the ridge yet, but they would. It was only a matter of time. "How many men can that trail handle at once?" 2 horses. Maybe 3 if we are careful." "Then here is what we do." 20 minutes later, Eli rode alone down the main trail toward the ambush, sitting tall in the saddle, making no attempt to hide. He wanted to be seen, wanted to draw their attention. It worked. The riders below spotted him immediately and spurred their horses forward, spreading out to block any escape. As they drew closer, Eli recognized the leader, Jack Morrison, Red Hawk, the man with dead eyes who collected Apache scalps. "Well, well," Morrison called out as they surrounded him. "The deserter returns. Where is your Apache whore, Bridger?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you will never find her." Morrison laughed. "Brave words for a man outnumbered 8-1. Tate is offering $1,000 for you now. Dead or alive. Seems you have become quite the problem. Tate is a thief and a murderer. The evidence will prove it." "What evidence? You mean those ledgers?" Morrison patted his saddlebag. "Tate already has duplicate records showing the Apache woman is the thief. Her word against his. And nobody believes an Indian." Eli felt his stomach drop, but kept his face neutral. "You are betting your life on that." "No, Bridger, you are betting yours." Morrison drew his pistol. "Now I can kill you here and collect my money, or you can tell me where the woman is hiding, and maybe I let you ride away. Maybe. You and I both know how that ends." "True enough." Morrison cocked his pistol. "Any last words?" "Yes. You should have watched your back trail." Morrison's smile faltered. He turned in his saddle just as Nasha and the 2 Apache scouts emerged from the rocks behind his men, rifles raised. They had circled around using the high ground while Eli drew attention below. "Drop your weapons," Nasha called out, "or we drop you." For a moment, nobody moved. 8 men with guns against 3. The odds were still bad. But the 3 had position and surprise, and more importantly, they had nothing to lose. One of Tate's men made the mistake of going for his rifle. The Apache scout's shot took him clean through the shoulder, spinning him from his saddle. The sound of that single gunshot echoed through the canyon like thunder. "Next man who moves dies," the scout said in heavily accented English. Morrison's men slowly raised their hands, their weapons falling to the dust. Morrison himself sat frozen, his pistol still pointed at Eli, but his eyes calculating the odds of survival. "It is over, Morrison," Eli said quietly. "Tate cannot win this. Too many people know the truth now." "You think truth matters? Tate owns the sheriff. He owns half the judges in the territory. Your evidence will disappear, and you will hang for murdering a respected businessman." "Maybe, but you will never know, because you will be dead long before that happens." Morrison considered this. Then slowly, he lowered his pistol. "You have made powerful enemy, Bridger. Tate does not forget. Neither do I." They took Morrison's men's weapons and horses, leaving them on foot in the desert. It was harsh justice, but less than they deserved. The Apache scouts wanted to kill them all, but Nasha convinced them that more deaths would only complicate what was already complicated. As they rode away, Eli drew up beside Nasha. "That was brave and foolish. Like you riding down alone to draw their attention?" "Exactly." She smiled despite the tension still singing through her body. "Then we are both foolish together. I can live with that." They pushed north through the afternoon, the land gradually changing from red desert to higher country dotted with juniper and piñon pine. The air grew cooler, the horizon wider, and always in the back of Eli's mind was the knowledge that they were running out of time. That evening, as they made camp in a hidden arroyo, one of the Apache scouts approached Eli. His name was Swift Runner, and he spoke better English than his companion. "Why you do this?" Swift Runner asked. "Risk death for Apache woman? Your people will call you traitor." "My people already call me deserter. One more name changes nothing." "But why? You owe nothing to Apache." Eli was quiet for a long moment, watching Nasha as she checked the horse's hooves, her movements careful and competent despite her healing injuries. "I owe everything to Apache. I owe blood debt that can never be repaid. But maybe this is small start." Swift Runner studied him. "You speak like man carrying great weight." "I am." "Good. Men without weight blow away like dust. Men with weight stay rooted." The scout paused. "She is strong, that one. Strong like mountain. You choose well. I did not choose. Destiny chose for me. Is there difference? Swift Runner smiled, the first smile Eli had seen from either scout. Apache believe all paths lead where they must. Fighting destiny is like fighting river. You only drown tired. That night, unable to sleep, Eli and Nasha sat watch together while the scouts rested. The stars overhead were impossibly bright, the Milky Way a river of light across the darkness. Tell me about after, Nasha said quietly. When this is done, when Tate faces justice and I am free, what then? I do not know. I have not thought past keeping us alive. Think now. Eli considered the question, really considered it for the first time. What did he want? Not just tomorrow or next week, but for the years that might stretch ahead if they survived this? Land, he said finally. Not hiding in the mountains like I have been, but real land. Build something. Maybe raise horses. Apache ponies are finest in the territory. He glanced at her. Would need someone who knows both worlds, someone who could trade with Apache and whites both. That sounds like partnership. It does. Is that what you are offering? Partnership? I am offering whatever you will accept. Partnership, friendship. He paused, gathering courage. More, if you want it. Nasha was quiet for so long he thought he had overstepped. Then she reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. When I was lying on that trail, she said, certain I was going to die, I promised myself something. If I survived, I would not waste time on hesitation or fear. I would say truth, even when truth is frightening. And what is truth? Truth is, I care for you. More than I expected. More than I planned. You saved my life, yes. But more than that, you saw me. Not Apache. Not mission schoolgirl. Not half-breed who belongs nowhere. You saw Nasha. Just Nasha. And you thought she was worth fighting for. You are worth fighting for. Then fight with me. Not just against Tate, but for something after. For possibility of life neither of us dared imagine before. Eli raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. That is deal I can make. They sat together as the night deepened, hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead. For the first time in 5 years, Eli allowed himself to imagine a future. Not running, not hiding, but building something with someone who understood what it meant to be caught between worlds. Dawn came too quickly. They rode at first light, pressing hard for Prescott. According to Swift Runner's calculations, they were 12 hours from the territorial capital. But Tate had a head start. He would reach Prescott before them, would have time to spread his lies and poison the well. It was mid-morning when they spotted the dust cloud behind them. Riders, coming fast, at least 6 of them. They found our trail, Nasha said, her face tight. How far to Prescott? Eli asked Swift Runner. 20 miles, 3 hours at this pace. And they are 2 hours behind us. They will catch us before we reach town. The other scout spoke rapidly in Apache. Swift Runner translated. Tall Wolf says there is place ahead. Granite Pass, narrow canyon, only one way through. We could hold them there. For how long? Long enough. Maybe. They pushed the horses harder, the animals' sides heaving, foam flecking their mouths. The land rose before them, the trail climbing into broken country where massive granite boulders stood like ancient sentinels. Granite Pass was everything Swift Runner promised. A narrow defile between 2 sheer rock walls, barely wide enough for 2 horses abreast. Defensible. Deadly. You two go, Swift Runner said, gesturing to Eli and Nasha. We hold them here. You will be killed, Nasha protested. Maybe, maybe not. But you will reach Prescott. That is what matters. He clasped her shoulder. Your brother said protect you. We protect. Now go. Swift Runner, go! Eli grabbed Nasha's reins and pulled both horses forward through the pass. Behind them, the two Apache scouts took position among the rocks, their rifles ready. As Eli and Nasha emerged on the far side of the pass, they heard the first shots. "We cannot leave them," Nasha said, tears streaming down her face. "We cannot let their sacrifice be for nothing. Ride, now." They rode like the wind itself pursued them, the horses' hooves pounding the hard-packed trail. Behind them, the gunfire continued, a steady rhythm of resistance and courage. Then, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, silence. Nasha sobbed once, a sound of grief and guilt. Eli rode close beside her, his hand reaching out to grip her arm. "They chose this. Honor that choice by finishing what we started." She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Yes, we finish it." Prescott rose before them like a mirage in the afternoon heat. The territorial capital was 10 times the size of Fort Verde, a proper town with adobe buildings and wooden boardwalks, telegraph wires, and the smell of civilization. They rode straight through the main street, ignoring the stares of townspeople who saw an Apache woman and a wild-looking mountain man covered in trail dust and dried blood. The federal marshal's office stood next to the governor's building, a solid structure of whitewashed adobe with the American flag flying above it. Eli and Nasha dismounted and strode through the door without ceremony. Inside, a gray-haired man in his 50s looked up from his desk. Marshal William Hargrove had the weathered face of someone who had spent 30 years enforcing law in hard country. His eyes, sharp and assessing, took in the state of his visitors in one glance. "Marshal Hargrove," Eli said, "my name is Elijah Bridger. This is Nasha Tahoma. We have evidence of murder, conspiracy, and theft by Raymond Tate." Hargrove leaned back in his chair. "Bridger, I know that name. You were scout for Captain Meyer, were you not?" "I was." "Heard you deserted. Went native. I went human. There is difference." Hargrove's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "And Miss Tahoma, you are wanted for murder of Cornelius Blackwood." "I witnessed the murder. I did not commit it." Nasha stepped forward and placed the leather satchel on Hargrove's desk. "Everything you need to know is in here. Ledgers proving theft, letters proving conspiracy, map showing plans to restart Apache wars for profit." Hargrove opened the satchel and began examining the contents. For 10 minutes the only sound was the rustling of paper and the ticking of the clock on the wall. Eli and Nasha stood silent, hardly daring to breathe. Finally, Hargrove looked up. "This is damning evidence, if genuine." "It is genuine," Nasha said. "I kept those books myself for 2 years. I know every entry." "Problem is, Miss Tahoma, territorial law does not allow Apache testimony in capital cases. 1872 statute. Native testimony is inadmissible without white corroboration." The words hit like the physical blow. Eli stepped forward. "That is insane." "That is Arizona," Hargrove said tiredly. "I do not like it any more than you do, but law is law." "Then what?" Nasha's voice shook. "Tate goes free, after everything he has done?" "I can arrest him for embezzlement based on these ledgers. That much I can do. But murder?" Hargrove shook his head. "Without another witness, without physical evidence tying him to the killing, he walks on that charge. Probably gets 5 to 10 years for theft. Out in 7 with good behavior." Eli felt rage building in his chest. "That is not justice." "No. But it is the best I can offer under current law." Hargrove stood. "Unless you can find me another witness, someone white who saw something or knows something, someone whose testimony would hold up in court." The door to the marshal's office burst open. A deputy rushed in, breathless. "Sir, Raymond Tate just arrived in town. He has the sheriff from Fort Verde with him and at least 10 armed men. Says he is here to collect the bounty on an Apache murderer." Hargrove's face hardened. "How long ago?" 5 minutes. They are gathering in the square. Tate is demanding you turn Miss Tahoma over to him." Nasha went pale. "He is here." "He knew we would come here," Eli said. "Knew we had nowhere else to go." Hargrove buckled on his gun belt. "Well, he cannot have you. Not until I sort this out proper." He looked at his deputy. "Get Judge Rawlings. Tell him we need an emergency hearing, now." "But sir, Tate has half the town council in his pocket." "Then we will see how deep his pockets really are." Hargrove turned to Eli and Nasha. "Stay here. Do not go outside. I will handle Tate." But even as he spoke, the sound of raised voices drifted through the window. A crowd was gathering, and Raymond Tate's voice, smooth and confident, was holding court. Eli moved to the window and looked out. The square was filling with people, 50 or more, drawn by the promise of spectacle. Tate stood on the steps of the governor's office, playing to the crowd like an actor on a stage. "Citizens of Prescott," Tate's voice carried across the square, "I come seeking justice. That Apache woman murdered my partner, Cornelius Blackwood, murdered him in cold blood and stole $5,000. Now she hides behind the law she broke." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement. Eli saw the way Tate worked them, pressing on their fears, their prejudices, their willingness to believe the worst about Apache people. Hargrove stepped out of his office, and the crowd quieted. "Tate, you want to file charges, you do it proper. Through me, not by lynch mob." "I am not calling for lynch mob, Marshal. I am calling for justice. Let the people see this woman. Let them hear her lies. Then let proper law decide." It was a trap, Eli realized. Tate was forcing a public confrontation, gambling that the court of public opinion would override evidence and law. And given the racial tensions in the territory, it was a gamble that might pay off. "What do we do?" Nasha whispered. Eli took her hand. "We go out there. We face him. And we trust that truth still matters. And if it does not, then we go down fighting, together." They stepped out of the marshal's office into the harsh afternoon sunlight. The crowd's attention shifted immediately, 100 pairs of eyes fixing on Nasha. The muttering grew louder, hostile. Eli stayed close beside her, his hand near his gun, ready for whatever came next. This was the moment everything had been building toward. This was where they would win or lose, love or die. And in the face of that crowd, with Raymond Tate smiling his cold smile, Eli felt something unexpected. He felt ready. The afternoon sun beat down on Prescott's main square like a judge's gavel, harsh and unforgiving. Eli and Nasha stood on the steps of the marshal's office, facing a crowd that had swelled to over 100 people. Miners with dirt still under their fingernails, ranchers in dusty work clothes, shopkeepers in aprons, women clutching their children close as if the sight of an Apache woman might somehow contaminate them. Raymond Tate stood opposite, flanked by the corrupt sheriff from Fort Verde and a well-dressed lawyer who looked entirely too confident. Tate's smile was the smile of a man who believed he had already won. "Marshal Hargrove," Tate called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent square, "I demand you arrest this woman for the murder of my partner, Cornelius Blackwood. She stands there, a fugitive from justice, protected by a deserter and a federal marshal who seems to have forgotten his duty." The crowd murmured its agreement. Eli could feel the hostility radiating from them like heat from summer stones. These people had already decided Nasha was guilty. All that remained was the formality of her hanging. But Marshal Hargrove stepped forward, his hand raised. "There will be an emergency hearing, right now, on these very steps, where all can hear and witness. Judge Rawlings is being fetched. Until he arrives, I suggest everyone calm down and remember that we are civilized people, not a mob." "Civilized?" a voice shouted from the crowd, "while an Indian murderer walks free? She has not been proven guilty." Hargrove's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "In this country, we have laws. We have justice, not vengeance masquerading as justice." Tate's lawyer stepped forward, a thin man with spectacles and the predatory air of someone who lived by finding loopholes. "Marshal, surely you are aware that under territorial statute of 1872, Apache testimony is inadmissible in capital cases without white corroboration. This woman's word means nothing." "I am aware," Hargrove said grimly. But this hearing will determine what evidence exists beyond her word. A commotion at the edge of the crowd heralded the arrival of Judge Rawlings, a stout man in his 60s with a face like weathered granite. He climbed the steps, breathing heavily, and surveyed the scene with obvious distaste. "Very well," he said. "If we must do this in the street like common rabble, let us at least do it properly. This is an emergency evidentiary hearing, not a trial. We determine if charges are warranted, nothing more." He turned to Tate's lawyer. "State your case." The lawyer pulled out papers, crisp and official-looking. "Your Honor, on the night of August 3rd, Raymond Tate witnessed this Apache woman, Nasha Tahoma, shoot his business partner Cornelius Blackwood. She then stole $5,000 from their office and fled. Mr. Tate has provided sworn testimony. The sheriff's office has confirmed powder residue was found on items in Miss Tahoma's quarters. She has motive, means, and opportunity." "And what evidence does the defense offer?" Judge Rawlings looked at Nasha expectantly. Nasha stepped forward, her head high despite the hostile stares. "I offer the truth, Your Honor. I did not kill Cornelius Blackwood. Raymond Tate did. I witnessed it." The crowd erupted in jeers and shouts. Judge Rawlings banged his gavel on the railing. "Silence! Miss Tahoma, you understand that your testimony alone is not admissible?" "I understand that the law is unjust, but I also have evidence." She gestured to Marshal Hargrove, who produced the leather satchel. 3 ledgers showing systematic theft by Tate and Blackwood. $47,000 stolen from government funds meant for Apache people. Letters detailing conspiracy. A map showing plans to restart the Apache wars for profit from military supply contracts. Judge Rawlings examined the documents, his expression darkening with each page. "These are serious allegations." "They are lies," Tate shouted. "Forgeries created by a desperate criminal." "They are my handwriting," Nasha said calmly. "I kept those books for 2 years. Every entry, every transaction. I can identify my own work." "The work of a thief," Tate countered. "She created false records to cover her own stealing." The crowd was swaying, uncertain now. The evidence was compelling, but old prejudices died hard. An Apache woman's word against a successful white businessman. For many in that crowd, the choice was already made. Then a voice rang out from the back. "I can corroborate her testimony." The crowd parted as a woman pushed through. She was middle-aged, Chinese, with the bearing of someone who had fought hard for everything she possessed. Sarah Chen, owner of the boarding house where Nasha had lived. "I am Sarah Chen," she announced as she climbed the steps. "I witnessed Raymond Tate threaten Miss Tahoma 2 months ago. He came to my establishment looking for her. When I said she was not there, he told me that if she continued asking questions about his business, she would disappear. Those were his exact words, disappear." "This is hearsay," Tate's lawyer protested. "This is eyewitness testimony," Sarah Chen shot back. "You want white testimony? I am American citizen. My word counts whether you like it or not." Judge Rawlings nodded. "Noted. Continue." An old man in a priest's collar stepped forward. Father Thomas Mackenzie, his white hair gleaming in the sun. "Your Honor, I heard Cornelius Blackwood's confession 2 days before his death. While I cannot break the seal of confession fully, I can say this. He spoke of his partner pressuring him. He spoke of fearing for his life. He specifically named Raymond Tate as the source of his fear." "Preposterous!" Tate was losing his composure now, his face reddening. "A dying man's rambling means nothing." "He was not dying when he confessed," Father Mackenzie said quietly. "He was seeking absolution for sins he was contemplating, sins his partner was forcing upon him." A third figure emerged from the crowd, Doc Samuel Brennan, the town physician, carrying his medical bag. "I examined Miss Tahoma when she first arrived in Prescott. Her injuries were consistent with her story. Defensive wounds on her hands and arms, bruising indicating she fought back against multiple attackers. The pattern of injuries suggests she was a victim, not an aggressor." The tide was turning. Eli could see it in the faces of the crowd, doubt creeping in where certainty had been. But Tate's lawyer was not finished. "All of this is circumstantial," he protested. "Character witnesses and medical opinions do not prove murder. The only eyewitness to the killing is the accused herself, whose testimony is inadmissible." "That is not quite true." The voice came from the crowd, quiet but carrying weight. People turned to see a slight man in his 30s, nervously clutching a worn leather case. He looked like he might bolt at any moment, but he climbed the steps with determination. "My name is Thomas Whitmore," he said, his voice trembling. "I was Cornelius Blackwood's accountant. I kept duplicate books. He made me. I was too afraid to come forward when he died, but I cannot let an innocent woman hang for a crime she did not commit." Raymond Tate had gone pale. "You are making a mistake, Whitmore." "The only mistake I made was staying silent this long." Whitmore opened his case and pulled out ledgers identical to the ones Nasha had provided. "These prove everything she said, the theft, the conspiracy, all of it." "Those prove embezzlement," Tate's lawyer said desperately, "not murder." "I also have this." Whitmore produced a sealed letter, the wax still intact. "Written by Cornelius Blackwood the day before he died. He gave it to me for safekeeping. He said if anything happened to him, I should give it to the authorities." Judge Rawlings took the letter, broke the seal, and read. His face grew darker with each word. "This letter explicitly states that if Mr. Blackwood dies under suspicious circumstances, Raymond Tate should be investigated. It details threats made. It describes Tate's plan to eliminate him and blame an Apache employee. And there is one more thing," Whitmore said, his voice growing stronger. "I was there, the night of August 3rd. I was working late in the back office when Tate arrived. I heard them argue. I heard the gunshot." He turned to face Tate directly. "I saw you standing over Cornelius's body with the gun in your hand. I saw you put the weapon in Miss Tahoma's desk drawer. And I saw you discover her hiding in the wardrobe." The square erupted, half the crowd shouting in shock, the other half in anger. Tate lunged toward Whitmore, but Marshal Hargrove intercepted him, his pistol drawn. "That is enough, Tate." "You cannot do this," Tate snarled. "I own half this territory. I have friends in the governor's office. You think one accountant's word will stand against mine?" "It will, when combined with physical evidence, eyewitness testimony, and written confession from the victim," Judge Rawlings said coldly. "Marshal, arrest this man for the murder of Cornelius Blackwood." Tate's hand moved toward his gun, but he found himself facing not just Hargrove's pistol, but Eli's rifle, and 24 citizens who had heard enough. Even his own hired guns were backing away, unwilling to die for a man whose crimes had been laid bare in the sunlight. "You think this ends it?" Tate screamed as Hargrove's deputies moved to restrain him. "There are 10 more like me, 20. We built this territory. We will not let savages and deserters tear it down." "Then we will fight them too," Eli said quietly, "one at a time, for as long as it takes." Tate was dragged away, still shouting threats and accusations, but his voice grew distant, lost beneath the sound of the crowd now debating what they had witnessed. Some still looked hostile toward Nasha, but many more looked ashamed. They had been ready to hang an innocent woman based on nothing more than the color of her skin and the lies of a guilty man. Judge Rawlings banged his gavel one final time. "Based on the evidence presented and testimony heard, I find no grounds for charges against Nasha Tahoma. All accusations are dismissed. Furthermore, I am ordering a full territorial investigation into the theft allegations and Tate's business dealings." Nasha swayed on her feet, the reality of it finally hitting her. Eli caught her, his arm around her waist, supporting her. "It is over," he said softly. "You are free." "We are free," she corrected, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. The crowd began to disperse, some stopping to offer awkward apologies, others slinking away in silence. Sarah Chen embraced Nasha, speaking rapidly in a mixture of English and Mandarin. Father Mackenzie offered a blessing. Doc Brennan pressed a small bottle of laudanum into her hand for the pain that still plagued her ribs. But it was Thomas Whitmore who surprised them most. He approached Nasha with his hat in his hands, his face filled with shame. "I should have come forward sooner," he said. "I was a coward. While you were being hunted, while you were beaten and left for dead, I was hiding behind my fear. I am sorry." Nasha took his hand. "You came forward when it mattered. That is courage. Fear and courage are not opposites. Courage is acting despite fear. Thank you for saying that, but I do not deserve your kindness. Perhaps not, but I give it anyway, because holding on to anger serves no purpose but to poison the one who holds it." As sunset painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Eli and Nasha stood on the steps of the marshal's office, watching the last of the crowd disperse. Somewhere in that territorial jail, Raymond Tate was beginning to understand that his empire had crumbled. His trial would come, and with the evidence against him, so would his execution. "2 people died getting us here," Nasha said quietly. "Swift Runner and Tall Wolf. They gave their lives so we could reach this moment. Then we owe it to them to make this moment mean something, to build something worth their sacrifice." She leaned against him, and he held her close, neither caring who saw or what they thought. They had fought through hell together, had faced death and corruption and their own deepest fears. What remained now was the aftermath, the question of what came next. "Your offer still stands?" Nasha asked. "The land? The horses? The partnership?" "It stands." "Then I accept, with one condition." "Name it." "We make it more than partnership. We make it family." Eli turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I am not good man, Nasha. I carry too much blood on my hands. Too many ghosts. You are man trying to be good. That is enough for me." She reached up and touched the scar on his face. "We are both scarred, both broken in our own ways. But broken things mended together are stronger than they were before. Your grandmother said that. She was wise woman, and she was right." Eli bent and kissed her then, soft and careful, mindful of her split lip and the bruises that still marked her face. But she kissed him back with a fierceness that spoke of life reclaimed, of hope found in the darkest places, of 2 people who had walked through fire and emerged not destroyed but forged into something new. When they finally pulled apart, she smiled. "So, where do we go now?" "Home," Eli said. "We go home. Not the cabin where I was hiding, but someplace new, someplace we build together." "That sounds perfect." They stood together as the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Behind them, the territorial capital carried on with its business, already forgetting the drama that had played out in its streets. But for 2 people who had been given a second chance at life, at hope, at something neither had dared to dream possible, this moment would be remembered forever. The road ahead would not be easy. They would face prejudice and suspicion. They would carry scars, seen and unseen, for the rest of their lives. But they would face it together, and that made all the difference. Somewhere in the mountains, Rosa Littlefeather was probably smiling, knowing that the seed she had planted in a lonely man's heart had finally taken root. Somewhere in Apache country, Kaya would hear the news of his sister's vindication and feel pride mixed with grief for the warriors lost. And somewhere in the halls of justice, the slow wheels of law would turn, grinding Raymond Tate and men like him into dust. But here, now, on these steps in Prescott, Arizona territory, in the fading light of an August evening in 1876, 2 broken souls stood whole. Not because their wounds had disappeared, but because they had found someone to carry the weight alongside them. And that, Eli thought as he held Nasha close, was all any man could ask for. Not redemption earned through grand gestures, but through small choices made every day. The choice to stand instead of run, to speak truth instead of silence, to love instead of isolate. He had started this journey trying to escape his ghosts. He was ending it by facing them, and in the process, he had found something he never expected. He had found home. 1 year later. The morning sun broke over the Mogollon Rim, painting the valley below in shades of amber and gold. Eli stood on the porch of their new home, coffee steaming in his hand, watching the mist rise from the creek that cut through their land. Behind him, he heard the soft footfall of bare feet on wooden planks. Nasha emerged from the house, wrapped in a blanket against the September chill, her hair loose around her shoulders. She moved to stand beside him, and without a word, he passed her the coffee cup. She took a sip and smiled, that quiet smile that still made his heart skip after a year of waking beside her. "You are up early," she said. "Could not sleep. Too much to think about." "Good thoughts or bad thoughts?" "Both. Mostly good." Their home was not the cabin where Eli had hidden for 5 years. That place belonged to the past, to the man he had been before destiny brought a dying woman across his path. This new house stood on land they had purchased together, 40 acres in a valley where Apache and white settlers had begun the slow, difficult work of learning to live as neighbors. It was modest but solid. 2 rooms with plans for more as their needs grew. A barn for the horses they were breeding, mixing Apache ponies with settler stock to create animals that combined the endurance of one with the size of the other. A garden where Nasha grew both traditional Apache plants and vegetables from the mission school days. A place that belonged fully to neither world, which made it perfect for 2 people who walked between them. "Rosa comes today," Nasha said, leaning against the porch railing. "She will want to check on the baby." Eli's hand moved unconsciously to rest on Nasha's belly, still flat, but holding the secret they had only recently confirmed. A child. Their child. Due next spring. The thought filled him with equal parts joy and terror. "What kind of world are we bringing a child into?" he asked quietly. "A better one than we found, because we are making it so." She covered his hand with hers. "One person at a time, one choice at a time. That is all anyone can do." Those words had become their philosophy over the past year. They could not change the whole territory overnight, could not erase centuries of mistrust and violence, but they could change their small corner of it, could show through living example that cooperation was possible, that 2 peoples could share land and respect without one dominating the other. It had not been easy. There were still townspeople in Fort Verde who spat when Nasha walked by, still Apache on the reservation who called her traitor for marrying a white man. But there were also small victories. The Apache children who came 3 days a week to learn reading and arithmetic in their barn, with Nasha teaching them to be proud of both their heritage and their education. The white ranchers who had started trading fairly with Apache families, having seen that honesty could be profitable. The slow erosion of the walls that had seemed so insurmountable a year ago. "Kaya comes too," Nasha continued, "with news from the territorial investigation." Eli nodded. The investigation into Raymond Tate's business dealings had uncovered corruption deeper and wider than anyone had imagined. 12 territorial officials had been implicated. 6 had already been convicted and removed from office. The recovered funds, nearly $90,000, were being distributed to the Apache tribes as restitution. It was not enough, could never be enough, but it was something. "And Tate himself?" Eli asked, though he already knew the answer. "Hanged 3 weeks ago. Prescott. September 3rd, exactly 1 year and 1 month after he murdered Cornelius Blackwood." Eli felt nothing at the news. Not satisfaction, not relief. Just a quiet acknowledgement that justice, slow and imperfect as it was, had been served. Raymond Tate had died knowing that his carefully constructed empire had crumbled, that his name would be remembered only as a cautionary tale of greed and cruelty. "Do you think about them?" Nasha asked. "Swift Runner and Tall Wolf?" "Every day. They gave their lives so we could have this." He gestured to the valley, to their home, to the life they were building. "I owe it to them to make it count." We both do." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher, burning away the mist to reveal the rich grassland below. In the distance, a small herd of horses grazed, their coats gleaming in the morning light. Apache ponies and settler horses living together in one herd. A small thing, perhaps, but symbols mattered. Rosa Littlefeather arrived mid-morning, riding a spotted pony with the ease of someone who had been riding since before she could walk. At 69, she showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, the past year had given her new energy, a sense of purpose in bridging the gap between her people and the settlers. "You look tired," she announced, fixing Eli with a sharp eye as she dismounted. "Good morning to you too, Rosa." "Good morning. Now answer. Why tired?" "Could not sleep." "Worry, baby?" Eli glanced at Nasha, who shrugged. Trying to keep secrets from Rosa Littlefeather was like trying to hold water in a basket. "How did you know?" Nasha asked. "I have eyes. Also, you glow. Apache women always glow when carrying child." Rosa climbed the porch steps and embraced Nasha warmly. "When?" "Spring. April, the doctor thinks." "Good time. New life and new season." Rosa turned to Eli. "You be good father. Better than you think." "How can you know that?" "Because you already good man. Good man makes good father. Stop worrying so much." Kaya arrived an hour later, bringing 3 other Apache men Eli recognized as tribal elders. They came bearing gifts, traditional and practical: a cradle board for the coming child, dried venison and pemmican, herbs for Nasha's health, and news from Prescott. They sat in the shade of the house, passing around water and food while Kaya spoke. His English had improved over the past year, the result of regular contact with settlers who were learning that not all Apache were enemies. "The territorial governor sends message," Kaya said. "He asks if Nasha will serve as advisor, help with treaty negotiations, bridge between Apache and government." Nasha looked surprised. "Why would he trust Apache to advise him?" "Because you proved honest. When you could have run, you stood and fought. When you could have lied, you told truth. Governor sees value in that." Kaya paused. "Also, federal government putting pressure. New policy from Washington. They want better relations with tribes, want to avoid another war." "That is progress," Eli said carefully. "But words are easy, actions matter more." "True, but words are start." Kaya looked at his sister. "What you say? Will you advise?" Nasha was quiet for a long moment, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly. "I will think about it. After baby comes. Right now, I have other responsibilities." One of the elders spoke in Apache, and Kaya translated. "He says you have brought honor to the people, both peoples, that your child will be bridge like you are bridge. This is good thing." They talked late into the afternoon, discussing the changes sweeping through Arizona territory. The new marshal at Fort Verde, honest and fair-minded. The school being built on the reservation, where Apache and settler children would learn together. The trading cooperative that Rosa had helped establish, where Apache craftwork was sold at fair prices directly to buyers, cutting out the middlemen who had exploited both sides for so long. Small changes, but they added up, like drops of water eventually carving through stone. As the visitors prepared to leave, Kaya pulled Eli aside. His expression was serious, the warrior assessing the man who had married his sister. "You have been good to her," Kaya said simply. "She is happy. I see it in her eyes. That is all I wanted. I am trying to be worthy of her. Trying is all any man can do. You keep trying, we stay friends. You stop trying, we have problem." But Kaya's smile took the edge off the threat. "You understand?" "I understand." "Good." Kaya clasped his shoulder, the grip firm and friendly. "Your child will be Apache and white both. Teach them to be proud of both. That is how we heal the divide, one child at a time." After they left, Eli and Nasha sat on the porch again, watching the sun sink toward the western mountains. The air had cooled, carrying the first hint of autumn. Soon the leaves would turn, the geese would fly south, and winter would settle over the high country. "Do you ever regret it?" Eli asked. "Giving up the quiet life for all of this?" Nasha laughed. "What quiet life? I was being hunted for murder I did not commit. That is not quiet." "You know what I mean. We could have gone somewhere else. California, Oregon, started over where nobody knew us." "And run from who we are?" She shook her head. "No. This is where we belong. This land, these people, this struggle. Running solves nothing. You taught me that." "I thought you taught me that." "Then we taught each other. That is what partners do." As darkness fell and the stars emerged, one by one, they retreated inside. The house was warm from the day's heat, comfortable and lived in. Books on shelves that Eli had built, baskets that Nasha had woven, a wedding blanket, both Apache and settler style, that Rosa had made for them. Small things that added up to a life. That night, as they lay in bed, Nasha spoke into the darkness. "Tell me a story." "What kind of story?" "The story of two people who found each other when they most needed it, and how they built something beautiful from broken pieces." Eli pulled her close, her back against his chest, his hand resting on her belly where their child grew. "Once upon a time," he began, "there was a man who ran from his ghosts. He hid in the mountains, thinking that solitude would bring peace. But peace does not come from running. It comes from standing still long enough to face what haunts you." "And then?" she prompted. "And then destiny brought him a woman who refused to be a victim, who had been beaten and left for dead, but who got up anyway, who had every reason to give up, but who chose to fight instead." "What happened to them?" "They fought together, rode through danger, faced death and corruption and their own deepest fears. And when it was done, when justice had been served and truth had won, they did something even harder." "What?" "They chose to stay, to build, to plant roots in difficult soil and tend them every day until something grew, something neither expected, something worth all the pain it took to get there." Nasha was quiet for a moment. Then, "That is good story." "It is true story. Best kind." They lay in silence, listening to the night sounds through the open window, an owl calling from the pines, the creek murmuring over stones, the wind sighing through the grass, the symphony of a land learning to breathe again after too many years of holding its breath. "Eli?" Nasha's voice was drowsy now, sleep pulling at her. "Yes?" "Do you think we changed anything? Really changed it?" "I think we proved it is possible. That is all anyone can do. Show that another way exists. Whether others follow that path is up to them." "Good answer." "I have good teacher." She fell asleep in his arms, her breathing deep and even. But Eli lay awake a while longer, thinking about the year that had passed and the years to come. About the child that would arrive in spring, neither fully Apache nor fully white, but something new. A bridge between worlds, like its mother, like its father had become. He thought about Cibecue Creek and the guilt he had carried for 5 years. It was still there, would always be there. Some wounds never fully healed, but it no longer defined him. He had made different choices when given the chance, had stood instead of run, had fought for justice instead of hiding from injustice. That did not erase the past, but it meant something for the future. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. The same stars that Apache and settler both looked up at and saw different pictures, different stories. But they were the same stars nonetheless. The same sky covering the same earth, where all people were born and died and struggled to make meaning of the time between. And in a small house in a valley where two worlds were learning to meet, two people slept. Broken people who had mended each other, lost people who had found home, two ghosts who had finally laid themselves to rest by choosing to live instead of merely exist. The road ahead would have challenges. Their child would face prejudice from both sides. There would be setbacks and sorrows, but they would face it together, hand in hand, step by step. Building something that mattered, creating ripples that would spread far beyond their small valley. Because that was what love did. Not the romantic love of songs and stories, though they had that too, but the deeper love that chose to stand beside someone through hardship, that chose to build when it would be easier to walk away, that chose hope when despair seemed more reasonable. Broken souls who mended together became the strongest blade. Nasha's grandmother had been right about that, and Eli and Nasha were living proof. As dawn broke over the Mogollon Rim once more, painting the world in shades of gold and promise, their story continued. Not with dramatic battles or grand gestures, but with the quiet courage of everyday living, of choosing kindness over cruelty, understanding over judgment, hope over despair, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one life built carefully from the ruins of what came before. And that, in the end, was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.